Howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Now, you may have noticed this little post on the Grinding Games website the other day, which is just stating that on Wednesday of next week, New Zealand time, which is also Wednesday my time here in Australia, but for those of you that are in the United States or Europe, it may well be Tuesday night. They're making the announcement of 3.7.0 League. And this will have all sorts of information about the expansion and the accompanying Challenge League and a whole lot of other little tidbits that are worth looking for. So at the moment there's this cryptic picture is the only other thing that's given, and you can see what looks like it's been deliberately blurred in Photoshop. It's been made much darker, much harder to see, but there's a whole lot of monsters running towards the camera here. That's all we can really see at the moment, and it's not enough to draw much information about the league. What I wanted to do though is look at some of the past announcement information and give you a sense of what to expect and what to look for. I do have the day off that this information is coming out. It's 11 o'clock on the 22nd for me, so it'll be a good opportunity. Sorry, no, 7 a.m. actually, 7 a.m. my time here. I'm off work that day. I've got day off for a bit of a relax and all, and I thought, why don't I just go through this with everyone live as it comes out? So I'll be doing that on Wednesday my time, Tuesday possibly yours. So there'll be a page that goes live similar to this. This is the synthesis one, and it'll have a trailer. The trailer will have a lot of hidden information in it, and I'll go through that at the time. But you can expect that the trailer will show a whole lot of gameplay footage that is not particularly anything groundbreaking for people that are experienced players, but there'll be hidden little gems in it. And there's hidden gems actually on the page itself as well. So if you have a flick through the synthesis version, you'll see, and this is at pathofexile.com/synthesis, it's still live, you'll see that it introduces Carvus, the main lore NPC of this expansion, and then sort of gives you a very brief summary on the first slide. You come down to the second slide and it explains in brief terms the memories that you'll encounter in maps and then the memory nexus. There's not much hidden in these. I've taken a couple of these screenshots to have a quick look at, and you'll see here this is just gameplay footage. Someone's combating the decay, killing a bunch of monsters and running away from the decay here. And this is another example. This is the memory that looks like the park map, and again it's just action footage. Likewise here you've got action footage, this time in the memory that looks like it's either Crimson Temple or one of the other temple maps. And then as we go down here into the section that's looking at the memory nexus, you see here gameplay footage of just standing out, opening the decaying map device in one of the boss rooms. Nothing particularly exciting. And then there's just a quick tech demo, I guess you'd call this, explaining how the pieces fit together. There's nothing particularly exciting, it just explains, someone that's experienced with the game will recognise, oh, this is Delve mods. But then if you have a look around, there's a couple of little Easter eggs. What's this here? Oh, that's a scarab. This has something to do with scarabs. And there's a little bit of information in that decision. This here, I believe, is the bestiary symbol. So this has something to do with Bestiary League. So there's a lot of these little, really well hidden Easter eggs that will give a little bit of information. Not necessarily immediately, but the more that you know about the league, the more you can understand it. Incidentally, this map has 2 boss encounters on it, which I believe is currently impossible in Synthesis. But Synthesis has changed a fair bit since it went live, so it may have been that you could get 2 at one point. Here's another screen and it shows that connections have been made. Oh look, here's a little icon that looks familiar, that's a breach. That looks like a gem. And so you'll see that there's very subtly hidden information contained in amongst the gameplay footage, the new gameplay footage. Those sorts of things are worth looking for. Generally speaking, when you're reading through this, you will spot 1 or 2 of those maximum. There'll be dozens of Easter eggs hidden through here, but you will spot very few of them. However, as a community, the Path of Exile subreddit will find most, if not all of them. Next up, there's some information about distant memories and just again This looks like a combat screenshot against one of the bosses. Doesn't really tell you very much of what's going on there. This is a very carefully choreographed combat screenshot. One of the synthetes is charging up a spell there, and this again is just showing off one of the bosses. Nothing particularly groundbreaking here, but sometimes there'll be a hidden information in one of these too. There's some information on fractured items here, and you'll see there's examples of a weapon that's got, I believe it's built-in flaring or annealed, or one of the fairly high tier, maybe it's razor sharp, one of the fairly high tier flat physical damage weapons, and it shows firstly the default roll and then a very lucky use of a chaos orb on it to transform this, generally speaking, garbage item into this quite strong physical weapon bow. So that's doing, I mean, it's only 300 physical damage a second, but it's a big jump up from what you started with. Likewise, this hubris is nothing special. This hubris is pretty solid. Nothing you'd want to use very late in the game, but something you'd use for a little while you're leveling. And you'll see here that there's enough information for you to then assess that it's reasonably likely that you can get these in pretty much everything, in pretty much every item slot. Now it turns out you actually can get fractured items for every item slot, but here they're only showing examples of things that would accept quality on them. So you might draw the wrong conclusion from this, that only qualityable items can be fractured, but at the very least you've got there's some hidden information again. One thing you notice as well is that the sockets remain the same. So that's making you think, oh, okay, so these accept various crafting currencies and that respects their sockets. This is the same item as this, except that from the point that it's gone from Oblivion Horn to Foewind, it's had various crafting orbs used on it. Now there's a little bit more information hidden here with the synthesizer. Not really hidden, it's hidden in plain sight, but you'll see the various implicits that are available. It shows off some fairly powerful implicits. Curse enemies with level 5 flammability on hit, +1 to maximum fire resistance, and of course the big daddy of all of them, Onslaught on boots. This is intended to show off to experienced players the potential power of synthesized crafting, and I think anyone that was experienced with the game would recognize at the time of seeing these that these are not going to be easy items to acquire. But that's something that that with Synthesis League, none of these were easy to acquire, whereas sometimes they will show an item that is easy to acquire as well. So they may have shown a unique item that's of middling rarity, as well as these items that are much rarer. And so it's worth having a look at all of the items and just looking for things that couldn't exist in the game before. That could be new uniques, it could be obviously new divination cards, which tend to be announced separately, and it could be all sorts of other configurations of items, modified uniques, items that are modified somehow. Like in the Incursion release, I believe they showcased some items that were double corrupted, and in doing so they also showcased some of the new corruptions that were added, because it was obvious that you could get items double corrupted, but then they also showed off some that had corruptions that couldn't exist previously at all. Now there's some information here on the spellcasting rebalance, and I did bring up these various images as well, and they just showcase some of the new support gems that are available. So if you click on these, you'll be able to see what the new information is. These are worth looking at. They don't give you enough information to assess whether the new gems, in this case it's Unleash and it's Spell Focus, whether these are particularly worth using or not, but just some information on what they do at a very, very basic level. Next up, there's the information on the new caster archetypes, which is one of those things that GGG have started doing where they'll introduce a build that it doesn't necessarily completely build itself, but it's a clear starting point of synergies for skills that will work together. So you'll notice here Purifying Flame and Soul Rend are 2 examples, and there's 6 of them here listed on the synthesis tab here. So there's Divine Eye, which I'm currently playing in the Synthesis Flashback League. And these show some basically high-level summary of what the skills do. Not necessarily enough information to tell which of these will be good, which of them will be mediocre, and which will be poor. But it's enough information to get a thematic sense of what the various skills do. And so you can see here Purifying Flame, which I've not seen many people having much success with in the Synthesis League. I think it may be a little bit undertuned, but it gives some information as to what it does. And of course you've got Bane, you've got all sorts of other skills there. Then there's this really interesting section where they showcase some of the new items that are available. So you have the Storm's Gift Assassin's Mitts, which haven't been particularly well received. Nebulous, again, not being used all that much. Then you've got Bottled Faith, which has been one of the massive, massive hits of this expansion. But it's just listed with the other ones that haven't been so successful. And it gives you a whole lot of things to think about. Some of these are going to be good. Some of them are going to be mediocre. Some of them are going to be quite poor, and some of them are going to be very niche items. And then you've got the divination cards. Divination cards are interesting in that whilst they can seem very simple, they can have a remarkable effect on the metagame of an entire expansion. And we do want to take an example of that. Betrayal introduced the Nurse card, which resulted in the Tower map going from a map that no one cared about to possibly the most popular map in that entire league, at least of red maps. It wouldn't surprise me if Tower was the most commonly run red map in the entirety of Betrayal League. And that was all because here's a new way to farm Headhunter that's in a map that's different, something that's new. Now of these, the Arrogance of the Vile Divination card landed in a couple of quite bad tile sets, Sunken City and Ancient City. It hasn't been enough to make those tile sets popular, but this card is a lot of fun, and I've seen from viewers that a lot of people like watching it get turned in, just because it's something that just comes up with interesting results that can inspire you to make a build, even if they don't necessarily end up being all that powerful. It is weakened by the fact that the item isn't quality, but in any case, it's one of my favourite divination cards now. The Seeker I haven't seen drop at all myself, but it's been very useful in this league because any source of Orbs of Annulment is good. And the Mad King is something that, the King's Path Prophecy is something that is hotly desired in solo self-found play, and so it's been a real boon for people in SSF. Divination cards are always worth keeping an eye on. I'm not expecting my next divination card to be in 3.7.0. I think it's quite a way off being, I don't even think it'll make 3.8.0 at the moment. The basic idea for it hasn't yet been approved, and it's not in the category of items that GGG will always approve. What my next divination card is for a Skin of the Loyal unique robe that has double implicit corruption on it. So similar to Arrogance of the Vile in that sense, to implicit corrupted, but specifically, instead of being a random unique item, it's specifically on Skin of the Loyal, which is one of the more interesting corruption targets, because you can get, you can sometimes get +4 to a skill gem on it, which is then extraordinarily powerful for some skills, but you might have the wrong gem colors for it, and so then you've got to make some difficult compromises. Then finally, there's usually an ending line that's just "and much, much more." So this can have a little bit of a summary. So it's mentioning here that the content from Betrayal has been integrated in the core game. Later, the Atlas has shifted, and there's been some music changes. Sometimes there'll be hidden things in this and much more as well, and it's worth sort of playing around with the mouse like I'm doing here. Even though I know there's nothing on this one, sometimes they'll hide something inside the artwork that a small minority of players will find, and then that players will discuss online on Reddit. Finally, you've got the supporter packs. The supporter packs will change with the announcement on Wednesday or Tuesday if you're in the States or in Europe or in a couple other places in the world. And so this is basically a last hurrah for them. Anyways, that's some of the things to look for in the expansion release. The key thing will be watching the trailer, and I highly recommend that when that comes out, that you have a look through it with a fine comb, because there will be lots of secrets in there, and then go and discuss it on Reddit, because not everyone will pick them up. Anyways, that's all I've got for the moment. Have a good one.